South Korea builds some of the best mid-range electric guitars on the planet, and most players don't know it. Pick up a Schecter, a PRS SE, or an ESP LTD, and there's a good chance you're holding a guitar built in the same factories that turn out instruments pros actually gig with. Those same factories have built guitars for Ibanez, Epiphone, and half the import guitar brands that defined the budget guitar market from the 1980s onward. But that same Made in Korea stamp has also been slapped on some of the biggest letdowns in guitar history, budget cash grabs that borrowed the reputation without earning it. We're counting down 5 Korean guitars that get it wrong, and 5 that prove why this country earned its name. If you've ever wondered how guitars are made at the factory level, and why quality control separates a great Korean instrument from a forgettable one, this is the rundown that actually answers that question. If you love content that separates the guitars actually worth your money from the ones riding on a reputation they didn't earn, hit the subscribe button, because it helps these videos reach the players trying to buy smart instead of trusting a country of origin sticker. Starting with the worst, the guitars that took a genuinely good manufacturing reputation and cashed it in for a quick sale. Number 5. Squier II Stratocaster, built in Korea between 1988 and 1992. This one's interesting because it's the guitar that almost tanked Korea's reputation before it even got started. Fender's catalog listed the body as hardwood. It wasn't. Under the finish, the Squier II was plywood, thin and noticeably heavier than the other Korean Strats that came after it, because cheap layered wood weighs more than it should. The hardware wasn't much better. Tuners that wouldn't hold pitch, a trem block that felt like an afterthought, plastic parts where other Korean factories were already using metal by the same point in the decade. What makes this one worth remembering isn't just that it was bad, it's that it landed at exactly the moment American buyers were deciding whether "made in Korea" meant anything, right after Fender had already scrapped an entire production run out of India for similar reasons, and this guitar told them the label still didn't mean much. It took years, and a switch to better factories like Samix, for that reputation to recover. If you find one today, it's a curiosity for collectors tracing Fender's manufacturing history, not a guitar you buy to actually play, and most of the ones still floating around need a full hardware swap before they're gig ready. Even collectors tend to treat it as a footnote rather than a prize, something you own to complete a timeline, not something you put on the wall. Number 4. Hondo II Deluxe, built by Samick under a joint venture with the Texas-based International Music Company. Hondo existed for one reason: to take advantage of Korea's low-wage manufacturing in the early 1970s and sell cheap guitars to American beginners who couldn't afford anything with a Fender or Gibson logo on it. And for a while, that formula worked. Hondo became one of the best-selling entry-level brands in the country by the mid-70s, moving serious volume through mail-order catalogs and discount department stores. But the II Deluxe is where the formula started showing its seams. As competition from other budget import brands increased through the late 70s and into the 80s, Hondo kept shaving cost out of the guitar to protect the price point. Thinner finishes, cheaper pots, tuners that drifted out of tune faster than they should have, even for a beginner instrument. It wasn't a scam, exactly. It was a guitar built down to a number, and you could feel it the moment you picked one up. The lesson here isn't that Korea couldn't build a good beginner guitar, it's that Hondo wasn't trying to. It was trying to hit a shelf price at a big box retailer, and the II Deluxe is what's left over when a guitar gets designed around a spreadsheet instead of a player. Vintage guitar dealers today mostly price these as project instruments, guitars worth restoring for the nostalgia rather than the tone, which tells you everything about where the original build quality actually landed. Number 3. The Kramer Focus series, specifically the Korean-built reissues Gibson's Music Yo division put out, starting in 1998, a year after Gibson bought the Kramer trademark out of bankruptcy. That's worth separating from the original Focus series, which was actually built in Japan by ESP back in the 80s, with real Seymour Duncan pickups and genuine Floyd Rose trems, good enough that Kramer collectors still rate the originals among the brand's best value guitars. Gibson's Korean-built revival tried to borrow that same reputation: super Strat shape, slanted humbucker, Floyd-style trem, but skipped the parts that actually made the originals good. The trems on these reissues couldn't hold tuning under real dive bomb use, the exact thing a Kramer is supposed to be good at. And the pickups were the kind of muddy, low-output units you'd expect from a guitar built to hit a shelf price at a big box store, not the specialty shops that carried the 80s originals. It's a strange case because the Korean factories doing the building weren't incapable of better work. Plenty of other Korean-built guitars from the same years held up fine elsewhere on this list. This one just wasn't given the budget or the attention to actually earn the name on the headstock. Gibson's later Kramer reissues eventually fixed most of these problems, but the 1998 to 2005 run remains the clearest example of a brand assuming an old logo alone could carry a guitar that hadn't earned it. Number 2. The BC Rich NJ Series Warlock. BC Rich guitars are famous for extreme body shapes. The Warlock, the Mockingbird, the Bitch, all built to look as aggressive as the thrash and glam metal they were made for. The NJ series started in a Nagoya, Japan factory in the early 80s, before shifting to Quartz factory in Korea after 1986. BC Rich's attempt to sell that shape to players who couldn't afford the real thing at a fraction of the USA custom shop price. The shape survived the trip. The build quality didn't always come with it. The Warlock's body is already unbalanced by design, all points and mass up top, and the NJ series didn't compensate for it with the neck angle or strap placement the USA models used. So the guitar constantly wants to dive toward the floor unless you're actively fighting it with your fretting hand. Add in tuners and a bridge that were clearly picked to hit a cost target rather than hold up to drop tunings, and you get a guitar that looks like a 1980s metal poster and plays like it's fighting you the whole set. It's proof that a factory can nail the shape and still miss the guitar underneath it. Plenty of players still buy them today for the look alone, fully aware they'll need to swap hardware and rebalance the strap position before the guitar actually behaves on stage. Number 1. The early Squier Standard Stratocaster, specifically the runs built before 1995, back when Young Chang was still handling production, before Samick took over and actually stabilized things across the whole Squier line. Young Chang is one of the founding names in Korean instrument manufacturing, better known today for pianos, but their guitar quality control in this specific window was genuinely inconsistent in ways that hurt the whole line. Players who owned these guitars back then will tell you the same story. Decent bodies, decent necks, real alder and maple instead of anything laminated, and electronics that let the whole guitar down anyway. Pots that got scratchy within a year of normal use. Tuners that wouldn't hold a bend, let alone a whammy dive, no matter how many times you had them adjusted. One owner online summed it up about as well as anyone could, calling the tuners on his so poorly made that even the replacement parts he ordered were just as bad as the originals. That's the real problem with Made in Korea in this specific window. It wasn't a quality tier yet. It was just wherever the guitar happened to get built that year, and the difference between a great Korean guitar and a forgettable one came down entirely to which factory got the contract and how much oversight Fender actually put into that contract. This is the model that made Made in Korea mean absolutely nothing, right before Samick's factories made it mean everything. It's a useful reminder that a country doesn't build a reputation, specific factories do, and Fender simply hadn't picked the right ones yet. Now for the flip side. These next 5 prove exactly what this country's factories are actually capable of when a brand hands them a real design and the budget to build it properly. Number 5. The Schecter Diamond Series C1 Classic, built at the World Musical Instruments Factory in Korea, known in the industry as WMI, the same facility that's built guitars for half the brands on this list, including Chapman guitars in more recent years. What sets the C1 Classic apart is the neck-through construction. The neck and the center of the body are one continuous piece of wood instead of a bolted-on neck, which is normally something you only see on guitars costing 2 or 3 times as much. That construction adds sustain and evens out the tone across the whole neck, something bolt-on guitars in this price range almost never manage. Players who've owned one for years still call it the best value guitar Schecter ever made, and Schecter doesn't even build this exact configuration anymore, which only adds to the reputation and pushes used prices up instead of down. It's proof that a Korean factory, when it's given real specs to work from and isn't fighting a price war, can build something that punches well outside its price bracket. Schecter's later Diamond Series guitars moved some production to other countries as the line expanded, which only makes the original Korean-built classics more sought after among players who compare notes on which factory run they actually own. Number 4. The ESP LTD EC-1000. Part of LTD's Deluxe line and built in the same Korean facilities that handle LTD's higher-end instruments, not the entry-level tier most beginners start on. The EC-1000 is routinely compared directly to ESP's USA-built EC series, and not as a complement to the cheaper guitar out of pity. Players who've played both back-to-back describe the fit and finish as close enough that the price difference feels more like a tax on the ESP logo than an actual quality gap you can hear or feel. Active EMG pickups, a mahogany body, a set neck instead of a bolt-on, all the specs you'd expect from a guitar costing hundreds more than the sticker actually asks for. It's become the guitar people point to when they want to prove that Korean built doesn't mean compromise anymore. It means value, full stop. It's also become something of a starter guitar for players moving up from entry-level instruments who want active pickups and a set neck without jumping straight to ESP's full USA pricing. Number 3. The Squier Vista Series Supersonic, built between 1996 and 1998, and one of the strangest cult favorites in Fender's entire budget lineup. The ceramic humbuckers were made in South Korea and mounted at an angle, canted toward the bridge instead of sitting straight, which gives the guitar a genuinely different voice than a standard Strat or Tele, more aggressive and cutting in the bridge position, without losing the low-end clarity. Fender only built it for a couple of years before discontinuing it, which is exactly what turns a budget guitar into a collector's item down the line. Original Vista Series Supersonics now sell for well over what they cost new, chased by players who want that specific canted pickup tone and genuinely can't get it anywhere else in Fender's current catalog. It's a guitar that got weird instead of playing it safe, and Korean manufacturing was good enough by then to actually pull the idea off without the execution letting the concept down. It's a small footnote in Fender's catalog history, but it's the kind of footnote gear collectors specifically hunt for, which says more about the guitar than any spec sheet could. Number 2. The PRS SE Custom 24. Specifically, the early runs built at the WMI factory in Korea before PRS expanded SE production to other facilities. This is the guitar that really changed the conversation around what a Korean factory could deliver on a production instrument. PRS built its entire reputation in America on obsessive fit and finish, flawless binding, perfectly carved tops, necks that feel identical from one guitar to the next off the line. When the early Korean-built SE Custom 24s started showing up with that same consistency at a third of the price of a US PRS, players who'd normally dismiss an import guitar without a second look had to actually reconsider what that label meant. It wasn't just good for a Korean guitar, it was good, period, next to guitars costing 3 times as much. And that distinction mattered more than almost anything else on this entire list. It's the guitar that gets cited most often whenever this exact debate comes up online, precisely because it's so hard to argue with a guitar you can put directly next to the USA version and barely tell apart. Korean-built Epiphones from the same era were starting to tell a similar story on the Gibson side of the market, and the pattern was becoming hard to ignore. Number 1. The Schecter Hellraiser C1, another WMI-built guitar, and the one players reach for most often when they want to prove a point about Korean manufacturing in a forum argument. Active EMG pickups, a set neck, a body and headstock shape built specifically for players who need serious low-end clarity for heavier, down-tuned styles. What earns it the top spot isn't just the spec sheet, it's how often you'll hear the exact same sentence from completely different players who've never met each other, that their Hellraiser C1 outperforms guitars costing 2 or 3 times as much money. That's not a coincidence, and it's not marketing copy repeated back. It's what happens when a factory gets handed a real design brief and the budget to actually execute it properly, instead of cutting it down to hit a shelf price. If one guitar on this list deserves to be the answer every time someone asks whether Korean-made guitars are actually good, it's this one. It doesn't win by being flashy. It wins by doing exactly what a working guitar is supposed to do, night after night, without ever giving its owner a reason to think about trading it in. So there they are, 5 Korean-built guitars that traded on a country's reputation without earning it, and 5 that show exactly why that reputation exists in the first place. The lesson isn't that made in Korea guarantees anything by itself. It never did, and it still doesn't today. It's that a name on the headstock can't fix what happens on the factory floor, and it can't ruin it either, no matter how many budget brands tried to borrow the shortcut. What actually matters is which factory built the guitar in your hands, what specs that factory was working from, and how much the brand on the headstock was willing to spend to get it right. Every guitar on this list came out of the same country, sometimes even the same factory floor a few years apart, and ended up worlds apart in how it actually played. If this rundown helped you separate the real deals from the guitars just borrowing a good name, hit subscribe, because it helps these videos reach the players trying to figure out what's actually worth their money, in a market full of guitars all claiming the same 3 words on the headstock, when only some of them actually back that claim up.